There's got something coming up.
Oh, look at that. So what I think I'm going to do. Oh, that's good. Okay, are we ready to get started? Everyone have a brownie, caffeine, wide awake? Yeah, maybe. Okay, all right. Well, during this session, this is again, greening public infrastructure. Actually, this should probably be bluing because we're looking at fish. But the title of the presentation is a new retention basin design option, creating the new age farm pond for the next generation urban angler. And to present on that is Tyler Stubbs. And I'm multitasking here. I'll give you a little bit of background on Tyler. He has a BS from South Dakota State University, an MS from Mississippi State University. Prior to becoming the IDNR's community fishing biologist in 2016, he was a district fisheries biologist for the state of Mississippi, based out of Tupelo in northeast Mississippi. And the community fishing program is a new program that looks to increase and improve fishing access and opportunities within Iowa's larger communities by building partnerships with city governments and other stakeholders. And I think it's just a wonderful opportunity, wonderful idea, bringing people to the water and the water resources within their community. So, welcome. We look forward to your presentation.
All right. I'll take this time to also welcome my co-author on this, Ben Dodd. Ben's a district fisheries biologist out of Boone, and his district covers the Des Moines Metro. And can everybody hear me all right? Said they're having some issues with this microphone, so I'm going to try to get by without it. As Pat mentioned, the community program is a new program initiated by the DNR to try to improve access, but to also try to appeal to a different group of folks that the DNR usually hasn't really marketed to. And that's one thing that we'll discuss today is how can we make some of these, how can we improve some of these access issues, and some of that's through the use of stormwater basins. Now, as Pat mentioned, I came here from Mississippi, and it seems like every time I've given a talk, it's gone well, and then hands raised for questions, and they ask me Mississippi questions. So I figured I'd just hit some of those high points here real quick. Mississippi, a lot of good things and bad things, known, for being first in everything that's bad. 4 years running national champs in obesity, and last in everything that's good. But there's a lot of really good things about Mississippi. #1 exporter of seafood in the country, by the way. #3 in the world. But we also have things like alligators, real popular topic. That alligator is an interesting alligator. Has anybody ever seen that one on the news? You remember seeing that? All right, that alligator made national news. It was a 794-pound male, state record. But when that animal was processed, they found Civil War era bullets in the hide. Give you an idea on how old that creature is. Pretty impressive.
Where was it found?
That was harvested during alligator season. So there's a 2-week alligator season in the state. Of course, snakes. Snakes are everywhere. I still walk gingerly wherever I go, out of practice. The Civil War still going on in some parts of the South. But the city of Vicksburg, Grand Trek Vicksburg on the 4th of July, it's the only city that doesn't celebrate the 4th of July. It celebrates it on the 3rd. They don't want to remember the 4th. Of course, some of the best food in the country, good barbecue, crawfish boils, all that kind of stuff. The undisputed best football player of all time, Brett Favre. And of course, home to popular movies of the South. Even though that was actually filmed in Kentucky, that's kind of some people's first versions of Southern folks. But so that should hit some of the high points of questions I've been asked this last year about the state of Mississippi. All right, so with the community fishing program, the big question is how can we get the group of people that grew up in the more rural environment and the people that have really been the bread and butter of most state agencies as far as license sales and heritage of fishing traditions are concerned, to people that look out their window and see this. Of course, that's the Des Moines skyline. How can we get some of those, I don't want to say values, but traditions from the rural environment to the urban environment? Here's a good example. This is a neighborhood in Ankeny. This is Cherry Glen. All right, real popular neighborhood. This bottom pond here was easily, by far, the hottest fishery in the Des Moines metro this winter. Lots of 8 to 10-inch bluegills were harvested. Lots of pressure. I went by one day, there was 18 shacks, ice shacks out there. There are currently 8 people in this picture with a fishing license. 8 people with a fishery, a real hot fishery in their backyard that are licensed anglers. When I drove by and saw those 18 shacks, there was 15 cars parked on that street. People are traveling from other places around the city. I went there from Bondurant, 7 miles away. Okay? The word gets out, but we're not getting out to these people. So how can we make them realize we've got this recreational opportunity right in their backyard? And that's a big question that we have. Of course, Ankeny is a city probably has the most public fisheries as far as the cities are concerned in the state. And a lot of them are really nice. Some weird spacing there, but so some of the things that we look at when we're building a community fishery and looking at urban anglers and urban programs are, what do we need to change, or why do we need to change? Well, this quote kind of sums it up. We're going to become irrelevant. And by saying we, I say natural resources, fisheries, recreation. All right. If we don't change and go after a different demographic, different constituent base, we're not going to have any say or any input in future projects that involve natural resources. And this is a quote from the former director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Dan Ashe, that kind of summed it up on what state agencies really need to do. We've got a large group of people that don't hunt, they don't fish. There may be some interest there. They're different skin color, they speak different languages. Those are not people that the DNR and other game and fish agencies across the country have really gone after or tried to recruit. It's something we need to change. State of Iowa, Crawford County. Anybody live in Crawford County? All right, it's the first county in the state to go majority minority. Okay, the Hispanic population in Crawford County is the majority. Got large influxes of refugees from Burma and Sudan, Thailand, Bosnia, in the Des Moines metro, and all across the country, all across the state. Those are people that we need to talk to. These are people that, a lot of them are interested in fishing, but have no idea that we exist. And we need to change how we get some of that media out. Please tell me everybody knows who that is up top. Much like Brett Favre, the undisputed best actor of all time, Andy Griffith.
I thought you were being Ron Howard.
Well, Ron Howard's a close second. All right, that's Andy and Opie, Myers Lake. They're outside of Mayberry, spending quality time together, fishing, right, after work or after school, going out, spending time together in the outdoors. This is a family I took at one of my lakes in Mississippi. They're from Brazil. Now, what's the difference? There isn't one, okay? Just because they're from a different country, different skin tone, different nationality, they're doing the exact same thing. After work, after a baseball game, we want to go outside and spend time together. We want to go fishing. Okay, those are things that we can work to improve to make sure that everybody has the same information and good information. We just need to figure out how to reach all these people. All right, so some of the things that we want to try to do with the community program is we want to increase access. And some of that comes with stormwater basins that are being built already, and people are already recreating them. All right, Sandy and I have had a lot of conversations with the city of Cedar Rapids. People are already fishing those things. Whether we put fish in or not, fish get there. All right, a lot of these systems are intertwined with each other. They get fish in them, or people stock fish in them themselves. and people will fish them. We need to, again, try to increase participation with our minority groups and figure out how to reach them with broadening our public outreach. But we really need to establish good partnerships with cities and civic groups to not only help promote these things, but to potentially help pay for some of these things. We also need to figure out how to evaluate ourselves so we can be efficient and effective. Are the things we're doing right now, are they producing the result we want? If not, let's try something else. Let's not just continue on the same path, doing the same exact thing if we're not getting what we want. So the approach we've been using, well, we need to promote what we've got. That Cherry Glen neighborhood in Ankeny was a good example. Those folks may or may not even know that that exists, or that that is an actual fishery, or that there's fish stocked in there. I would assume that people that live right by there probably realize that when they have cars parked up and down the street, but you never know. We need to assist engineers and developers, city groups with basin design. The way the current stormwater manual design criteria is set is for stormwater management, which is obviously what it's for. That is not real conducive for a sustainable fish population. So we put a design together that will be in the next version of the stormwater manual where a city can say, hey, we want option B instead of option A to a developer or an engineer. This is what we want it to be like. We want to market this as recreation. Here's how we need to build it. We also need to work to promote safe and clean environments. The multitude of surveys that the DNR has done, that's always a concern amongst our anglers. Is it somewhere that's safe, where a mother can take her kids, and is it clean? And sometimes cleanliness just involves the city or somebody placing a garbage can there and having the ability to actually throw trash away. Been able to build a real close relationship with a lot of our fish management biologists, and as far as management and stockings are concerned. How many people in here work with the city government? Just raise your hand. Okay, so these basins that you have, if they're built to a sustainable way, the fish that get stocked in those can be stocked in there free for you by the state. That's something we can provide. Okay, that's something that we can provide you. You don't have to worry about stocking fish and where to get fish from. That's just something we can do. That's available to you. Now, everybody that raised their hand, how many people knew that? Ankeny. Cedar Rapids now. Okay, so that's something that we need to do a better job of as well. It's making sure that the cities are aware of what opportunities are available. And that's not just fish, that's consultations and fish management, grants that are available. How can we help pay for some of these things? All right, those are things that I can help you with. We've also got some staff dedicated to aquatic education or angler education. Okay, those are people we can also bring in on the conversation to help with your park and rec directors potentially on planning and coordinating some of these outreach events. All right, so why is that important? And essentially, why do I exist with the DNR? Well, 64% of Iowans are considered urban. Okay, that was actually pretty astonishing when I saw that, considering how rural Iowa really seems to be. And our population isn't really increasing. We just see more people influxing from rural environments to the urban areas. And according to the last U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service survey, 56% of our anglers are urban. That's a majority of our own constituents live in these urban areas. And the vast majority of those, or close to the majority, are in the larger 11 cities in the state. On a national level, 72% anglers are considered urban, but we still are only hitting about 16% of our population is a licensed angler, which is actually pretty good on a national level. And from what we've been able to see a little bit right now, preliminary, is that our urban anglers are less likely to travel to fish. And our more densely urban areas, like the downtown Des Moines, downtown Cedar Rapids, are using a lot of public transportation or bicycles, more sustainable transportation. So they're definitely less likely to travel. I'm more of a visual learner, so to put some of that on a graph, I'll give you an idea of the population trends in the state of Iowa. Okay, you can see the urban is in the blue, black is the rural residents. There's definitely a different trend. One's increasing and one's decreasing. Okay, that's where we need to focus, is on this increasing. As far as our license holders are concerned, looks like around 2000 or so is when we kind of swapped to more urban residents, in a very similar trend. Our urban anglers are increasing, our rural anglers are decreasing. All right, this is just kind of a basic heat map. It doesn't really say anything too significant, because you would assume where you have more people living, you would sell more fishing licenses. And that's exactly what we're showing, is the darker the red, the more licensed anglers. Okay, so you can obviously pick out Des Moines, Ankeny, Cedar Rapids, Davenport, Waterloo, Cedar Falls area. Okay, so that's nothing too surprising. What can be surprising to people is when we start to actually point out areas that are publicly accessible to fish. All right, this is the Des Moines Metro. That's 111 fishable retention basins and ponds. Okay, there's roughly 30 to 35 in Ankeny. There's 14 in Altoona. There's 5 in Johnston. Okay, there's multiple in Des Moines, and the list goes on. These are places that we can market and the cities can market as something that people can recreate with. That's usually what determines where people live, is where you can recreate. This is something that you can also push. One thing that is interesting to note is if you go to a lot of these city websites across the state, fishing isn't really mentioned as a recreation. Okay, you got swimming and biking and trails and et cetera, et cetera. The fishing a lot of times is left off. And that's something that we hope to change when we can get people to realize how many places there actually exist. One way we'll do that is with this map, if we expand that out, is what we'll be calling the Community Fishing Atlas. And that's something that we can work with the cities to promote. And it'll be a map of areas that are publicly accessible to fish, with a little bit of information about each, what species are potentially available. But it'll give that initial way for somebody to get on their mobile device, look and see, here's where I live. I live over here in West Des Moines. Where can I fish? Well, I've got City Hall pretty close to my house on Mill Civic, and I've got Blue Heron Lake, both with trail access that I can bike to. So that's how we hope that will work. We'll hopefully get that out here within the next few months. Now, if you replace those orange fish dots with black dots, those are those same ponds. Okay, and this is a heat map of our population density in the Des Moines Metro. And I apologize that I'm focusing a lot on the Des Moines Metro, but it's easy to focus on. It's our largest area. Okay, and you can see we've got large density in Ankeny, Des Moines, especially on the south side of Des Moines here. Got Altoona out here, West Des Moines. All right, you can kind of pick some of those hot spots out. So one question we want to know is, where people are living, do we have access available? And this is a map that can help us, if West Des Moines wants to build a pond or has something going on over here, we can say, well, yeah, we've got a huge gap right here of where you can actually fish. That would be a fantastic spot. Okay, same thing with south side of Des Moines. As far as our license holders are concerned, do we currently have places where our license holders are? Or a better question would be, if we build these things, do people buy a fishing license? Essentially, if you build it, will they come? To some extent, yes, some no. Obviously we've got a lot of ponds in Ankeny, and we've got a pretty big hot spot up there of license holders. I hate to focus on license holders because people think of a money aspect, but license holders can also mean a care aspect. Okay? If people pay money for something, they tend to care about it more. And we can get more help with civic projects and cleanups and that sort of thing, where we've got potentially more license holders. And we can take that even further down to the pond level. Okay, this is in the center of that, it's hard to see, this is McCrae Park in the south side of Des Moines. So some reference, this is Gray's Lake, we've got the Raccoon River, downtown's up here. Each one of those pink dots represents a license holder. Okay, so we can see that within a mile of McCray Park, we've got 620 people that are licensed anglers. So we can assume that they fish. If the city of Des Moines wanted to do something and renovate McCray Park, okay, one thing we could do when that stuff is completed to let people know that, hey, we've got a brand new fishery here, we've got a new fish population, is we can market to certain areas. All these up here are apartment complexes. It's great places to do outreach and great places to distribute information. And we talked a lot about retention basins and ponds, which is obvious for the conference, but river access is also a big concern. Again, this is downtown Des Moines. The East Village, which is a up-and-coming neighborhood in Des Moines, there's a lot of people that fish there. So we also need to make sure that we've got good quality river access. And we've got good quality places where they can go, good clean places, because they're going to utilize this area. And for the most part, they live here. There's a lot of things you can do in downtown Des Moines. You can live there, you can play there, shop, etc. These people may or may not even be leave. They might leave or may not leave, okay? So they may live there, which makes them, again, care a little more about their environment. All right, so now we're going to, as Peter said this morning, we're going to put the fun in it. We're going to add some fun to it with retention basins. Not usually a super fun topic, okay? But we're going to try to put some fun to it with fishing. These two ponds are, the top one's in Norwalk, the bottom one's Marina Cove in Polk City. Surrounded by houses. That's how a lot of these are. What's not in that picture, the one in Polk City, is some amenities. There's a bathroom there, there's a playground area. That acts as kind of a focal point and a meeting area for all these residents, which is great. And those are actually two bass out of there. All right, so how do we do this? How can we provide a good, sustainable fishery? Well, we start with building it right. And then we stock it right. And then we fish it right. Okay, those are kind of the three golden rules of pond management or basin management. Okay, the current designs, as they stand for the stormwater basin, is 3 to 6 foot average depth to provide a sustainable fishery, 6 to 8 foot max. One of the biggest issues we run into is this 10 foot wide, 1 foot deep bench, commonly called the safety bench. That's usually results in about 10 feet of vegetation, which can be hard to cast past if you're with a child. 25 to 50% of the surface area, less than 1.5 foot. Again, a lot of times that ends up being covered up in vegetation and unfishable. A good example of that from our perspective, if we want to go check your fish population, is you run into this, where we're backed up as far as we can go, and the boat has yet to hit the water. That makes it very difficult for us to access it with our equipment. As far as our design is concerned, it is much deeper and steeper. Okay, this is a new pond in Clive that's following close to our designs. Instead of 3 to 6 foot, we're looking at 8 to 10 for an average depth, and 15 to 30 max depth. Okay, we want it to be more sustainable. We run into a lot of issues, especially during the winter with shallow water. But another big issue is vegetation, and we've seen some of our invasive species. Curly pondweed, for example, is present in some areas of the metro. It's real present, along the I-380 corridor. We're seeing that grow up to 12 feet. And so if we have a lot of the, large part of the surface acreage is under 10 feet, that's a lot of vegetation to deal with. So we don't want any more than 15% of that to be the littoral zone. And that's both from a recreational standpoint, but from a maintenance standpoint for the city. Okay, the city has spent lots of money on vegetation control. This will help at least alleviate some of that. We also would like to see on some of these designs an outlet structure be put in place. So we can drain the pond completely if we need a renovation, or if there's any other issues, we can at least get the pond down without having to pump it out. Here's an example of a cross section and a kind of an as-built design of this. The steeper, again, 2 to 1 off the bank, covered in riprap. Instead of a 10-foot bench, it's a 4-foot bench, and then 3 to 1 to the bottom. And that 4-foot bench is great habitat for bluegill, but it's also going to be where we're going to see our vegetation grow. You'll see on the as-built design, this thing up here, this boat access. That's completely optional, but that's something that we wanted to put in there, again, so we could access it. It's hard for us to back a trailer off of 2 to 1 riprap. So it's a little shallower access. Some of the cities I've spoke with that have thought about keeping this in the design have said, well, we can market that as a kayak access, which is obviously something you can do. So what's it look like when it's different? Okay, here's a 1-acre pond. The initial design is on your left, and the design after we've worked with the city is on the right. Okay, the design on the left had a max depth of 8 feet with this 10-foot bench. The design on the right with the 4-foot bench down to 18 feet. Okay, that's what we would really like to see. We're not only providing a much more sustainable fishery that can make it through the winter and provide overwintering, we're lowering the amount or deterring the amount of vegetation that can grow, the amount of vegetated habitat that can grow, which is going to help the city out in the long run. You know, one thing Pete mentioned this morning was sometimes you think of cost, and that is true. You know, this may cost more, but you also need to think of the value and what your future cost will be if you stick to some of these shallower basins when you're trying to looking to intentionally provide a fishery. Here's a good example of a different type of basin. This is Terra Lake in Johnston. A basin doesn't necessarily have to be a bowl. It can have different contours, it can provide different areas of fisheries habitat while still maintaining your stormwater goals. And this is definitely a center point with the city. I don't know if anybody from the city of Johnston's here, but this is something that has received a lot of press coverage. There's constantly Facebook posts and social media posts about this. There's all sorts of events planned down here. Okay, this is a definite place where the city has taken everything in stride and is trying to do everything they can to get people out here. And a lot of different unique things here at Terra Park. And lastly, this is a newer, kind of more of a regional retention basin. Again, you're seeing contour changes. This actually has a max depth of 36 feet. Okay, there's a lot of water here, over 15 foot. A lot of contour changes. We actually just stocked this yesterday with bluegill. We'll stock it with bass here in the next couple of weeks. But again, this is not just a bowl. Okay, it's something that you could really promote, and it's going to provide a lot of great fish habitat. So why should you listen to me? That's a great question. My wife asks that constantly, I think. But we want to avoid issues like this. Okay, excess vegetation, or unsightly vegetation, or vegetation concerns that impair recreation, or impair access. You know, that doesn't look too great. And some of this, you know, there's a lot of algae and duckweed and a plethora of other things in there. I'll talk a little bit here in a little bit about stocking and what we'll do to avoid some of this as well. All right. It is not somewhere where you really want to take a kid fishing right away. Okay, you could probably drive past that to find the next one. But again, I also realize that these weren't built with the intention to provide recreation. It's also just been a byproduct that is happening. Or should we do this? All right, that's me in my younger days, weed eating a pond. Okay? It's not something, I don't think the city's got a pond weed eater on their payroll anywhere. And we really want to avoid this. Okay, you see the ice is still here. This was very common across the state this year, especially in the shallower waters where we've got long extended ice periods. In shallow water, we tend to see fish kills. A lot of this is going to be gizzard shad. which are not going to be something we're going to stock. They're either going to be illegally placed or they'll enter the system some other way. It leads to a mess, and it leads to me getting calls and the city getting phone calls. And so that's something we really want to avoid. And lastly, with these designs, we want to avoid this. And this goes along with watershed work as well, and best management practices. Okay, this pond here on the left, this is the same pond. One's in '05, the other one's in 2016. It is over half the surface acreage gone in 11 years of sedimentation. There were some depths taken on this pond in 2011 with a max depth of 8 feet, and I ice fished it this year and it had a max depth of 5. Okay, so we've lost 3 feet also. How this pond does not winter kill every year, I still do not know. I still do not understand. All right, but it's definitely something that will need some attention. This is something that also needs attention, and the city of Urbandale has some really good signs up to tell people not to feed ducks and geese. Okay, they lead to a lot of issues, overwintering. You can see they've taken over this pond. You can't really see in the picture, but that ice that looks a little darker, it's stained green. It's a lot of defecation from 1,000 geese that stay there. A lot of residents in this particular neighborhood feed geese. Not only is it bad for the waterfowl, it's not the food they're usually feeding them is bread, way too high in carbohydrates for the goose diet, but it leads to a lot of nuisance. You get geese chasing people on trails, they're loud, they're causing potentially poor water quality, and so signs like these or ordinances like these that exist are also good to promote. Some people simply just do not know it's not good to feed ducks and geese at their local pond. This is Lake Patoka in Bondurant. It's one of my favorite fisheries. We fish here a lot for quite a few reasons. I was telling Pat earlier, I've got 2 daughters, 5 and 1. There's a lot of good area here that's being soon to be planted in native habitat. But you've got a playground, you've got bathrooms, you've got shelters and gazebos. There's trash cans all over the place. There's wine receptacles all over. Picnic tables. Lots of stuff to do. All right, that's where the fun's at. We can fish, we can play in the playground, we can walk the trail, a lot of people just have pickup games on this particular diamond. Okay, there's lots of stuff to do. This is a recreational hub for a town of 5,000 people right outside the metro. Bondurant has an average age, much like the rest of the Des Moines metro, of 29. 29 is the average age of Bondurant. A lot of the metro suburbs are in their mid-30s. Okay, a lot of younger populations and looking for places to recreate. Where can we recreate? Where can we fish and play on the playground and maybe have a pickup softball game or something, or a volleyball game over here, all in the same place? Right, this is a really good example of some things that you can offer. And it doesn't have to be, this happens to be a modern restroom with running water in it. It's not necessary, really. Some sort of restroom is, if you're somebody like me with 2 young girls, that's something that we seek out, that I seek out, especially if I'm with them by myself, is that, so we've got a safe place for them to use the restroom. All right, lastly, finished up here, we've got other watershed improvements. This is at Centennial Park in North Liberty, lots of bioswales and bioretention cells. Any sort of BMPs will help. I know Easter Lake Watershed has a cost share program to live in the watershed for rain barrels and help with rain gardens and that. Same thing, the city of Pleasant Hill has a grant process. I'm sure there's others that I'm not aware of. But these things are stuff that you can do wherever. This is right off the main parking lot. Johnston at Terra Park, they've got the same thing. These are things that can be done, taken into account. I am not a BMP expert, but I know some. And I know where some grants exist. Okay, and that goes for a lot of other things, boat ramps and that sort of stuff. If those questions come up, I can help you get to those areas and help put you in touch with those people. All right, and we'll touch on stocking here. Got the difference between proper stocking and bucket stocking, as we like to call it. Okay, we've got a nice bass. Where was Ankeny at? Amy back there. So this is out of Renaissance Pond in Ankeny. It's a 1.2 acre pond, and we had 3 of those. All right. And this is some goldfish somebody helped us out with in a different pond. So we've made one shocking run, one electrofishing run, which is part of our sampling equipment. And here's what we got. We've got a koi, a white crappie. Neither are recommended or stocked by us. We've got 2 goldfish, 2 of the biggest goldfish I've ever seen. And we've got a bullhead. Okay, all undesirable species. When we look at this run, which is just our sampling, we've got 1, 2, 3 bass and a lot of 3 to 5 inch crappie, none of which would be considered acceptable by our anglers for really harvest or catch, for that matter. This is a pond that is really not going to generate a whole lot of excitement from anglers. Okay, this is why I said I wanted to really make the point that the fish in these new basins that you build as cities or developers, please give us a heads up. And we can, if you're going to provide public access, we can provide the fish. And we can try to avoid issues like this. Is this going to be avoidable all the time? Absolutely not. Because you never know what somebody may have done with it. But it's something we can really work to provide to get a good enough predator base built up where they can take care of those goldfish when they first get stopped. We also want to avoid doing this. All right, this is a fish cleanup, getting that starting over. This is a grass carp, something we don't recommend we stock anymore because it's usually an all or nothing control. They usually eat all the rooted vegetation, and the nutrients have to go somewhere, usually in the form of filamentous algae and mats of algae. We'll work through some signage. This is still under construction. This will be something, as I meet with each city, we'll be pushing out to figure out how we can get these provided at each location. One will be a sign that not only brands our program, but is synonymous with public access within city limits for fishing, with the city's logo or partner logos, and then regulation signage. Almost done. These are new ponds, new fisheries for anglers of Iowa this next year. There's 18 ponds here, newly built, newly stocked. Most of these were stocked this week. On both sides of the Des Moines Metro, Tiffin, Merriam. Be working on one in Fort Dodge here soon. Okay, these are new areas that we're building. These are 18 new fisheries for residents of potentially your city, and new areas that you can promote and market. So we need to go that way, okay? I actually took a picture of that. I don't know what it was for. That was in South Louisiana, but it looked like it'd been there quite a while, and the people just liked it. So that was it. That's all I got.
All right, with that, thank you.